The Bach chorale, Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, sung not in the original German, but in Welsh. It's an example, here in this most English of places, of the influence of a Welshman in Cambridge, the organist and choirmaster of St. John's College, George Guest. He was born in Bangor, North Wales, and nearly all his life he's been involved in church music, first as a boy chorister in the cathedral at Bangor, and later at Chester Cathedral. For 4 years, the war took him away to the Royal Air Force, first to India, where he played swing on a piano in a Bombay nightclub, and then to Europe. Since the war, music here in Cambridge has been his life, and with the true fervour of an exile from Wales, he's recently relearnt his native tongue. By a happy chance, his College of St. John's had a Welsh origin. It was founded in 1511 by Margaret Tudor, mother of Henry VII. Many celebrated members of the college have passed through these halls. Men like the Elizabethan Lord Burleigh, the poet Wordsworth, the politicians Castlereagh and Palmerston, and the reformer Wilberforce. And in more recent days, television's Jonathan Miller and cricket's Mike Brearley. The college library was built in 1724 by John Williams, a Welsh Archbishop of York. Its books include the first Welsh Bible, translated by Bishop William Morgan, who once lived and worked in Dr. Guest's rooms. 30 years ago, George Guest entered St. John's as an organ scholar. Now he's organist to the whole university and holds the treasured Lambeth degree of Doctor of Music, bestowed by the Archbishop of Canterbury.
I think that when I came, it's true to say that St. John's choir was perhaps under the shadow of the choir down the road, as we call it, namely the very famous choir of King's College. And it did not suit me at all to be so much second best, and I thought that it would be a very fine work to do, to try and, with the help of the college, of course, to pull the choir up, to put a choir like St. John's, really, I think, on the map, if one may put it that way, takes 25 or 30 years, starting more or less from scratch as one had to, because it takes a very long time to build up a local reputation, an even longer time to build up a national reputation, and an even longer time to build up an international reputation.
The choir's high repute is maintained by a searching annual audition of 7- and 8-year-olds. What qualities does he look for?
I suppose there are three main ones. The first thing is obviously that a boy must have a good, clear, pleasant voice. He must also be a musician, and indeed most of them will have started to play the piano or the violin or some other instrument. And also, of course, they must have nerves of steel, because they have great deal of very difficult music to perform. They have long hours of rehearsal. They have to come over from the choir school here every morning at 8:30 for an hour's rehearsal. It does them the world of good. They walk through the fresh air, through the most lovely part of Cambridge, through the college backs, into an hour's intensive rehearsal, and then back to their lessons. They're all fairly clever, I think, at their lessons too. It's not a question of them being good only at music, because they have to sing in a number of languages. They have to sing, for instance, in German, in French, English, Latin, Greek, Welsh in particular. We do quite a lot of music in Welsh here. Now let's have a look at this hymn now, Cofian Gwlad Ben Llywydd Tirion. I think the best thing to do would be if we just check the words. So can you just say the words together now? Nice forward vowels, please, and a nice North Welsh accent. Right, off we go. Ready?
Cofian Gwlad Ben Llywydd Tirion.
I believe it very important that all the members of the choir coming through my hands are at least aware of this ancient language and are aware of something of its literature and are aware of the importance to keep it alive. So there are just one or two things there. Can you say grin?
Grin.
Very forward, not like the English grin, but grin. Say
Grin.
Right, and Llyd wasn't quite right.
Llyd.
You just say dross.
Dross.
Came out as a little dross or something like that. Right, now come on, let's make a start. Shall we do one or two arpeggios first, please? Nice, full tone, produced forward to a continuous R, 2 octaves up, 2 octaves down from here. Ready? 1, 2, 3. When their voices break, it's a very sad time for them, particularly when they come to their last service and they lose for the very first time in their life something which they're not going to find again this side of the grave. And I think perhaps they realize it. They go from our school to a public school or to a comprehensive school, and quite often, which is a very nice thing, they come back to us as choral scholars, undergraduates who sing the outer tenor and bass parts when they get to the age of 18. They leave fresh-faced, with a few pimples. They come back with Chinese moustaches and beards. Yes.
When he's not lecturing, arranging services or concerts, making records or touring Europe, the USA or Canada, he finds relief and relaxation, surprisingly enough, on the lively terraces of 3rd and 4th Division soccer clubs.
I derive great pleasure from going to watch these matches, not only for the matches themselves, but largely because whatever conversation one may get into, one is reasonably certain of not getting into an academic argument of any kind.
His other activities include organ recitals and adjudicating at music festivals and at Eisteddfodau. But the choir of St. John's is his priority. 16 boys from St. John's Choir School sing the treble parts, and 12 undergraduates maintain the bass, tenor and alto lines. The choir has a vast and ever-expanding repertoire, over 800 items, ranging from Robert White to Benjamin Britten, and from Palestrina to Bruckner. As choir master, the responsibility for all of it is his. How does he define the role of the conductor?
There are two elements, aren't there, of music. This is an obvious thing to say. The element of technique the element of emotion. One has to come to terms immediately with the fact that it is impossible to achieve anything like 100% in either one of these categories or attributes. Therefore, I think that the conductor's job is to give a choir or an orchestra an adequate technique, perhaps even a very good technique, but to leave sufficient in reserve so as to be able, on the inspiration of the moment, to add something to the performance that the composer has not been able to put in the copy, to see printed in the copy. Because I think if one begins from the standpoint that no two notes in any phrase should be exactly the same except for a special effect, clearly notation, and musical notation, is quite inadequate to deal with the presentation of a program of that kind. Maybe try that once again, please, now. Note again, David. Thank you. 3, 4. It's very, very important, I think, to appear to be angry at times. What is the kind of pompous mannerism when one is 23 or 24 becomes, by the time one reaches 40 or 45, an amiable eccentricity. I find that the older I get, the more outrageous things I can get away with. And this is a great advantage to me, because it all helps, I think, discipline, choral discipline, that members of the choir don't think that they know exactly what you're going to do or say next. I've got to stop you here because the Kenai boys weren't singing their F sharp in tune. You sang la 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 instead of la. There's a world of difference. We're at least a quarter of a semitone flat then. Now, are there any points that anyone's unsure about in this? Your solo seems to me to be absolutely splendid. All right with it? It seems... Datages, yes, but I mean, where is that? What page is that?
The first
In the first one, yes, it's got, what should it be? Datages, yes. But you don't need to try that again, David, do you? You can guarantee that, I expect. That's fine. Big breaths. It is, in fact, in our choir at least, very much a joint and a corporate rehearsal, although obviously I myself am in charge of it and have the last word, but one has learned a lot through the years by asking choristers and asking choral scholars what they would do with a certain phrase and so on. Yes. Wait a minute. Top of page 8, first bar, yes? Are they? Well, they oughtn't to be doing that. That doesn't mean you're singing a B flat, does it? No, you wouldn't. No, must be somebody else then. Who was it singing a B flat? No. Edward? Really? Is that really so? Good Lord. Top of page 8, please. You must do it. Right. 3, 4. Just a slip, I expect. Is it all right now for you? Fine. Well, I think that's probably all, isn't it now? I don't think there are any other parts. Do watch this tuning, get a nice legato to everything. Don't sing everything the same. Mind your words. And don't have big gaps, by the way, in the playing song. Just sufficient in between the lines to take a breath. Right? Good. Now, can we try that again, I wonder, with that in mind?
Christe qui luxes et dies, noctis tenebras detegis, lucis quae lumen crederis, lumen beatum predicas.
Having reached this high standard of music making, how does Dr. Guest now compare his choir with their great rivals at King's?
Well, one has said before, I think that it's rather like asking the manager of Manchester United what he thinks of Manchester City. The content of one's answer would be much the same in either case, although no doubt it would be phrased slightly differently. We have a great respect for the place down the road, as it's affectionately known, and I think they for us. I think that if one was analysing the nature of the performances of the two choirs, one would say that King's, I'm sure correctly and rightly, emphasize technique. Sometimes, some might say it may be the acoustics, I don't know, I may be wrong in this, but sometimes perhaps at the expense of spontaneity. We, on the other hand, achieve, I think always, a high degree of spontaneity, but sometimes, and I'm the first to admit it, at the expense of technique. Because it's very difficult to be really and sincerely excited about something, but at the same time to be completely disciplined, which is exactly what one has to do if one is trying to achieve this difficult balance between emotion and between technique in either singing or playing, but more especially in singing, where you have to make your own notes. But I suppose the whole business of St. John's and King's relations was best summed up by Sir David Wilcox when he was organist at King's. We had a dinner, a big dinner at St. John's, and it was in fact a dinner of old choristers' associations from all over the country, and he, of course, as organist of King's, had been invited as a very honoured guest. And the delegates to this dinner had attended Evensong in St. John's. We'd put our best feet forward, and we really had sang the service rather well, though I say it myself. And speaker after speaker spoke of the excellence of the singing they'd just heard at St. John's Chapel. And one speaker was so moved as to say, singing was quite out of this world. And then I feared for the worst, and actually got it when David stood up to reply for the guests. He started by saying that as organist of King's, he was very interested indeed to hear that the singing at St. John's these days was like nothing on earth.
How would you sum up the 30 years you've spent here at St. John's?
It's been a very happy time for me, because I always enjoy a fight, as long as there's at least one prospect in 10 of winning at the end. And one started, as I did say earlier, in a very small way. Later it's been very much the rolling stone, and as one has done more and more, the reputation of the choir has increased. The only thing I regret is that life comparatively is so short, and it takes so long to build up a choir of this kind, and to build up a reputation, and by the time one has really done this and achieved it, well then one is almost ready for retirement. But it's been a very pleasant and rewarding time. I like Cambridge, but more particularly do I like St. John's, and I'm very happy that I've spent all my working life to date, or almost all of it, in these lovely surroundings.